The wind howled softly through the Himalayas, brushing across the peaks like a whispering lullaby. Beneath the towering glaciers and silver-tipped ridges lay a hidden valley, one that no explorer had ever marked on a map. Snowflakes drifted lazily through the air, catching the morning light like falling diamonds. In this secret valley, tucked between two sleeping mountains, stood a tiny wooden hut that gave off the most unusual smell, tomato sauce and garlic. And inside that hut lived Yarrow the Yeti, who had a secret dream unlike any other Yeti in the world. He wanted to become the greatest spaghetti chef the mountains had ever seen. Yarrow wasn't like the other Yetis who spent their days roaring, stomping, or hiding from humans. He had soft white fur, eyes as blue as glacier water, and paws far too gentle for smashing boulders. Every morning, he tied a red and white checkered apron around his furry belly and stirred big pots of noodles that bubbled and steamed like tiny snow volcanoes. He had discovered spaghetti years ago when a lost hiker dropped a packet of noodles and a recipe book near his cave. From that day, Yarrow had practiced cooking every single night, measuring flour with icicles and twirling noodles with carved wooden sticks. His dishes weren't perfect, sometimes they froze before they could boil, but Yarrow never gave up. The problem was, no one had ever tasted his spaghetti. The mountain goats avoided his hut because of the smell of garlic, and the snow hares were too shy to knock on the door. So Yarrow cooked alone, humming to himself and imagining customers who would cheer, "More spaghetti, please." Sometimes he would set up a table with pine cones as pretend guests and serve them steaming bowls. But every time he looked out the frosty window, a little sigh escaped his furry lips. What good was a chef without anyone to share his food? One stormy night, as the snow piled higher than his roof, Yarrow heard a faint sound, knock, knock, knock. Startled, he almost dropped his ladle. No one had ever come to visit before. He opened the door, and there stood a small penguin, shivering and holding a map upside down. I think I'm lost," squeaked the penguin. "And very hungry." Yarrow's heart melted like butter on a hot skillet. "Then you've come to the right place," he said proudly, ushering the little traveler inside. That night, the valley filled with laughter, warmth, and the sound of slurping noodles. As the penguin devoured the spaghetti and declared it the most magical meal in all the snowlands, Yarrow realized something deep inside him. Maybe his dream wasn't so impossible after all. Maybe, just maybe, the mountains were ready for a restaurant run by a Yeti. And with a gleam of determination in his icy blue eyes, Yarrow decided he would open his very own spaghetti shop, no matter how far or cold the journey ahead might be. When morning broke over Maromere, the fog had lifted. The first rays of sunlight painted the rooftops in gold, and birds sang again for the first time in many days. The villagers awoke feeling different. Some wept for no reason they could name. Others laughed, overwhelmed by a strange rush of emotion they hadn't felt in weeks. They remembered their worries, the small aches of life, the fears, the sorrows, but instead of despair, they felt something softer. Relief. Wholeness. As if each worry, returned to them, had been washed clean by moonlight. Ilara watched from the well's edge, her hands trembling around the broken pieces of the charm. She felt hollow yet alive, her heart heavy with the weight she had taken back. The spell's burden lingered within her, she could feel the villagers' worries beating beneath her skin, whispering at the edges of her thoughts. But where there had once been dread, now there was understanding. "Worries," she whispered, "are part of being human. They remind us we care." She placed the shards gently on the stone rim, letting the morning light catch them. For a moment, they shimmered faintly, like stars bidding farewell to dawn. As the days passed, Maromere slowly returned to itself. The baker sang again, though his hand sometimes shook when he kneaded dough. The cobbler's wife wept over her tea, then smiled through her tears. Children ran through the fields, arguing and laughing and dreaming. They had not lost their fears, but they had found balance. Life had rhythm again, worry and hope, sadness and joy, all weaving together as they were meant to. The villagers still spoke kindly of the witch on the hill, who had once lifted their burdens with a single charm. But none knew the cost she had paid, or where she had gone, for Alara had left Meromir quietly one dawn, following the forest path until the trees swallowed her silhouette. Some said she sought the oak again to return what magic had taken. Others whispered she became one with the woods, tending to lost worries and forgotten dreams. In truth, she built a small cottage deep in the forest's heart, where the wind whispered through her garden and the night sky shone clear. There, she brewed tea for travelers who wandered in burden and left lighter, though she never spoke of spells again. Sometimes, when the moon is full and silver light floods the valley, villagers say they hear her song carried on the breeze, gentle, kind, and full of love. It's said that if you listen closely, the wind itself seems to whisper her promise. Peace is not the absence of worry, but the courage to hold it with love. And under the starlit sky, the valley sleeps, restless, imperfect, and beautifully alive. The days that followed were filled with beauty and sorrow in equal measure. The prince and Marina grew closer, bound by quiet companionship and unspoken emotions. He admired her kindness, her gentleness, the way she seemed to understand his soul without ever speaking a word. Yet, in the shadows of her joy, Marina felt the slow ache of despair. The sea witch's warning haunted her: if the prince did not love her truly, if he did not kiss her before the full moon, she would belong to the sea forever. Each night she watched the moon rise higher, its pale light like a silent clock counting down her heartbeat. Stood on the eve of the full moon, the palace was alive with music and light. The prince was to announce his engagement, to the princess of a neighboring kingdom. Marina's heart shattered when she saw the young woman enter, kind, radiant, her voice clear as sunlight. And when she sang, the melody was hauntingly familiar, the same song Marina had sung to save him on that stormy night. The truth struck like lightning: the sea witch's spell had twisted fate. The prince believed this new princess was his savior, the voice that called him back from the depths. Marina stood frozen, silent, watching as the man she loved took another's hand. That night, when the celebration faded and the moon climbed to its highest, Marina slipped away to the shore. The waves lapped gently against her feet, whispering her name. Her sisters appeared, their faces pale and tearful, their hair flowing like mourning veils. "We found her," one said, holding out a blade carved from a sea serpent's tooth. "The sea witch gave us this, a way to save you. If you take the prince's life before sunrise, his blood will break the spell, and you will return to the sea." Marina took the dagger, her trembling hands reflected in the moonlight. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a living heart. She crept into the prince's chamber, where he slept beside his bride-to-be. The moonlight traced the lines of his face, peaceful, unguarded, and full of dreams. Marina raised the blade, her heart a storm of love and agony. But as tears spilled down her cheeks, she knew she could not do it. To save herself by destroying the one she loved would make her no better than the darkness she had fled. Gently, she kissed his forehead, a silent farewell, and turned toward the open sea. As dawn broke, she ran to the edge of the cliffs and leapt, her body dissolving into foam as the first rays of sunlight touched her. But the story did not end in death. As her body became one with the sea, a warm, golden light enveloped her. The pain faded, replaced by a feeling of boundless peace. Voices, soft and melodic, surrounded her, the spirits of the wind and waves. "You have done a selfless thing," they whispered. "Your love has freed you." Marina looked down to find her form changed, no longer mermaid or human, but something lighter, brighter. She rose into the morning sky, a spirit of the sea breeze, watching as the prince awoke and gazed toward the horizon. A gentle wind brushed his cheek, carrying her final whisper, "Remember the sea." And though he never knew why, he smiled, feeling that somewhere out there, love still watched over him, eternal as the tide. When morning came, the snow sparkled under a clear blue sky. The storm had left the valley silent, but not broken. Yarrow stood outside his hut, squinting at the white-covered land. The air smelled crisp and new, like the world had pressed a reset button. He felt tired, but a flicker of determination shone behind his icy blue eyes. "We'll rebuild," he said softly, gripping his ladle like a knight's sword. Pico clapped his flippers. "Then let's make it bigger, brighter, and warmer than ever before." And so they began, two tiny figures in an ocean of snow, building hope one log at a time. As they worked, something magical happened. One by one, the animals of the valley began to appear, the same friends who had once filled Yarrow's stand with laughter and cheer. The mountain goat came first, carrying wooden planks on his back. "You fed me when I was hungry," he said. "Now it's my turn to help." Then the snow hares arrived, rolling up balls of snow to build walls. Even the grumpy marmots joined in, hammering nails with their tiny paws. The valley, once silent and cold, now buzzed with teamwork and joy. It wasn't just rebuilding, it was a celebration of friendship. By sunset, the new restaurant was finished, and it was beautiful. The walls were carved from pine logs, the roof sparkled with frozen icicles, and little lanterns made from crystal jars hung all around. At the front stood a new sign, painted with care by Pico himself, the Yeti Spaghetti House, where every bowl feels like home. When Yarrow saw it, his heart nearly burst. "It's perfect," he said softly. "But, how will we ever thank everyone?" Pico smiled mischievously. "Easy. We throw a festival, the Festival of Warm Hearts." For the next 2 days, the valley became a swirl of joyful preparation. Foxes gathered berries for sauce, owls made lanterns from frozen pine cones, and goats collected snowflower cheese. Yarrow cooked from dawn till dusk, filling giant pots with spaghetti, sauce, and laughter. When night finally arrived, the valley glowed like a dream. The mountains echoed with music as animals danced under strings of twinkling lights. The smell of warm tomato sauce filled the air. Even the moon peeked out from behind the peaks, curious to see what all the joy was about. At the center of it all stood Yarrow, apron tied, ladle in hand, serving his famous spaghetti with a glowing smile. As he watched his friends laughing and sharing food, he realized something truly beautiful. His dream had never been about selling spaghetti. It was about bringing warmth to a cold world. The storm had tested him, but it had also shown him what love could build. "The Festival of Warm Hearts," he whispered to Pico, "isn't just tonight. It's every time someone shares a meal." And under the soft glow of the moon, the valley felt more alive than ever before. Winter slowly softened its grip on the valley. The snow still glistened, but now patches of green peeked through, signs of new beginnings. The Festival of Warm Hearts had changed everything. Travelers began to hear whispers of a magical place hidden deep in the mountains, where a gentle Yeti cooked spaghetti so delicious it could melt even the iciest of moods. Curious explorers, brave enough to trek through snow and wind, found not a monster, but a chef with kind eyes and a warm fire waiting for them. And so the legend of Yarrow's spaghetti began to spread across the world, not as a myth of fear, but as a story of love, courage, and comfort. Yarrow's restaurant became more than just a place to eat, it became a home for wanderers, dreamers, and lost souls. A weary fox trader once said that eating Yarrow's spaghetti felt like being hugged from the inside. A young bird who couldn't fly found a job delivering bread rolls to every table. Even old mountain spirits, invisible to most eyes, were said to drift close just to smell the cooking and feel the warmth. And through it all, Yarrow stayed humble. He stirred every pot with care, laughed with every guest, and always said, "There's enough spaghetti for everyone, because kindness never runs out." One evening, long after the last bowl had been served and the stars had sprinkled across the sky, Yarrow sat outside his hut beside Pico. The valley lay quiet, wrapped in silver moonlight. "You know," Pico said softly, "you've done it. You've shared your warmth with the whole mountain." Yarrow chuckled, his fur glowing in the starlight. "Maybe," he said, "but there's always someone new who could use a little comfort, and a little spaghetti." Together, they gazed at the mountains, their hearts full, knowing that tomorrow would bring new faces, new laughter, and maybe even new dreams. Years passed, and stories of Yarrow's kindness became bedtime tales told in faraway villages. Children would giggle at the idea of a big, furry Yeti twirling noodles with icicles and seasoning sauce with snowflakes. But deep in the heart of the Himalayas, those who truly believed could still find a faint golden glow through the mist, the glow of Yarrow's kitchen, forever open to anyone who needed warmth. Some said if you listened closely on quiet winter nights, you could even hear him humming softly, the sound of bubbling sauce keeping rhythm with his song. And so, the legend of the Yeti who sold spaghetti lived on, not as a tale of mystery or magic alone, but as a reminder of something far simpler, that even in the coldest places, kindness can light a fire that never fades. Every bowl Yarrow served was a message, every laugh he shared a promise, that friendship, warmth, and a good meal could bring the world a little closer together. And as the moon rose high over the snowy peaks, the smell of tomato and garlic drifted through the crisp air, a gentle whisper of love carried forever by the wind.